What's up, Graham? It's Guys here. And have you ever wondered how much money you need to make to afford a car like this, or how about this? Well, wonder no longer, because today we'll cover exactly how much income it takes to afford the average car throughout every price point, updated based on today's interest rates and lender guidelines. Because chances are, the car you have an eye on might cost you a lot more than you expect, especially when the average buyer is now paying in excess of $1,000 a month. Although before we go into how much car you could buy throughout every price point and how much it would cost to own something like this, if you enjoy these videos, please do me a favor and hit the like button or subscribe if you haven't done that already. It really gives me a good indication if these are the types of videos you want to see more of. And as a thank you for doing that, here's a picture of a crab. So thanks so much, and also big thank you to Kikoff for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, so to start, it's really important to understand as early as possible that your monthly car payment is never going to be the true cost of owning a car. And in terms of what I mean by that, here's the reality. First, on the most basic level, you got the cost of financing. Overall, it was found that 85% of new car purchases and 55% of used car purchases are bought with debt, and 25 to 50% of those loans are given to people who might not be able to afford them on terms as long as 72 months. This means with the typical interest rate now between 7 to 12%, you'll need to budget for a monthly payment that'll most likely last a few years. In addition to that, two, we have gas mileage. Look, a large portion of this cost is going to be dictated by whether or not you drive a fuel-efficient Tesla Model 3 or a gas-guzzling Mercedes G63 AMG. So with the average car getting 26 miles a gallon with an average commute of 41 miles a day, you're looking at an extra $120 a month in fuel costs on top of everything else. Like 3, insurance. This cost is going to be dependent on your age, income, driving history, mileage, car, marital status, and a million other things that insurance companies probably don't want you to know about. But overall, the average insurance is another $250 a month, with the chance of going up even higher if you're under the age of 25. On top of that, you also have 4, registration. Every year, your state's going to charge you a fixed amount based on the MSRP or purchase price of your vehicle, usually a few $100s a month. But the more expensive a car you drive, the more expensive this is probably going to be. 5, you then have repairs and maintenance. This one could be a bit difficult to predict, but chances are if you have a Porsche, BMW, or Mercedes, you're going to end up paying a lot more than that of a Toyota, Tesla, or Honda, which is why your ownership cost could be a lot higher than you expect. And finally, we have the last one that most people pay no attention to, and that would be depreciation. In my opinion, this is something that absolutely needs to be factored in anytime you own a car. For instance, a brand new vehicle is going to lose 11% the moment you drive it off the lot. Within a year, it's lost 25% of its value. After 3 years, it's lost 46%. And within 5 years, the average car is worth 63% less than it would cost new. Now, even though I'll cover some cars later in the video that hold their value incredibly well or even go up in price over time, for practically everything else, this is a cost that you have to factor in, which leads me to what's called the 23-8 rule. In terms of calculating how much car you could afford based on your salary, this one goes out to the money guys, who suggests that first, you should put 20% down. This means that you'll pay 20% of the car up front to be able to lower the amount that you have to borrow to pay for the car. And this does 2 things. 1, you'll end up paying less in interest over the lifetime of the loan, while usually getting a better interest rate because you put more money down. And 2, it decreases the likelihood that you'll be upside down on that loan the moment you drive it off the lot. Second, they also recommend you pay off your car in at most 36 months or 3 years. The goal here is that a 3-year loan generally carries a lot less interest, more of your payment goes towards principal, and once you have the car paid off, you have all of that money left over to invest elsewhere. This also works to discourage people from taking on a 72-month loan on a car that they only keep an average of 79 months. So basically, by the time they pay off the car, they sell it and then they get a new car that starts the entire loan process all over again. And finally, third, you should spend no more than 8% of your pre-tax income on all things transportation. So as an example of what you could buy with this method, let's take a look at the average person making $45,000 a year. In this case, they would be able to spend $3,600 on all things transportation, including their payments, gasoline, insurance, and so on, or about $300 a month. This works out to a car that's worth about $7,600, because with $1,500 down, your monthly payment will come in to just around $200 a month, which which leaves you with an extra $100 left over for everything else. From there, if you have an income of $75,000 a year, you would be able to afford a $500 a month total transportation cost, which would comfortably allow you to afford a $14,000 car like this with $2,800 down, which would bring your monthly payment to just under $375, with the rest being allocated towards your additional costs. After that, with an income of $125,000 a year, you would be able to bump your price range into something in the $24,000 bracket. At $200,000 a year, you could comfortably afford a $38,000 car, and at $300,000 a year, you could drive something like this, assuming again 20% down and a 3-year loan. Now obviously, these numbers are really meant for someone who prioritizes paying down their debt as fast as possible, living below their means, and having enough money left over to save and invest elsewhere. However, I get that most people don't want to wait until they make $200,000 a year to drive a $38,000 car, especially when the average used car now is selling for $28,000. So because of that, there's another rule similar to follow known as the 24-10 rule. Although before we go into that, I just want to say that even if you follow these rules to a T, you stick with a budget, and you find the perfect car, you could still wind up paying a lot more than expected, simply because of your credit. The reality is, your credit influences everything from the rate you spend on a loan to how much money you pay in interest to even whether or not you get approved in the first place. This is why optimizing your finances starts with building your credit the right way, which is where our sponsor Kikoff is there to help. For those unfamiliar, Kikoff is the #1 credit building app in the App Store that makes it simple and affordable to start improving key credit factors like on-time payments and utilization, with plans starting at just $5 a month. Even better, but there's no credit check to sign up, there's no interest, and there's no hidden fees. Plus, once you turn on autopay, those on-time payments automatically get reported to all 3 major credit bureaus. In fact, users who started with credit below 600 saw an average increase of 25 points in their first month and up to 84 points after the first year, simply by keeping up with their monthly payments. Take myself for an example. Strong credit is what's allowed me to instantly get approved for a 3.75% interest rate for 60 months when I bought my Tesla Model 3. It's how I get the best financing terms, the best rates, and have the most money left over just to be able to invest elsewhere. So if your credit's holding you back, Kikoff is one of the easiest ways to get started, and they're giving 80% off the first month, which brings your cost down to just $1. All you got to do to get started is click the link in the description or go to getkikoff.com/Graham to check it out and sign up today. Thanks so much, I hope this helps, and now let's get back to the topic of the video, and that would be the 24-10 rule. Just like the previous example, this says that you should be putting 20% down on a 4-year loan that costs you no more than 10% of your income, and by following this, you would be able to buy a lot more car. For example, with an income of $50,000 a year, using the 24-10 rule, you would be able to buy something in the $14,000 price point, which would result in a $300 car payment and $100 left over for everything else. At $80,000 a year, you can increase your budget to something in the $24,000 range. With $125,000 a year, you could buy something around $42,000. At a $200,000 income, that's a car in the $65,000 price range. And at $500,000 a year, you could buy something worth $160,000. The downside to this, however, is that you're going to end up paying slightly more of your income towards transportation, while at the same time extending out your loan an extra year. So yes, it's technically doable, but you will be burdened with higher monthly payments, which is the exact opposite of this next approach, and that would be the Dave Ramsey method. In a perfect world, he says, the car that you could afford is the car that you could buy outright in cash. Or basically, no payments, no loan, nothing. Just buy a car, drive it until the wheels fall off, and then repeat the process over again. Hopefully after many, many years. His thinking here is that the monthly cost of a car detracts from better investment opportunities out there. A car is really, at the end of the day, a depreciating asset. And as long as you get from point A to point B, it doesn't matter how you get there, as long as it's safely with something that's reliable. In addition to that, he practices the belief that the total value of a car should never exceed 50% of your income, assuming you could pay for it outright in cash. So if you make $50,000 a year, you should be driving a $25,000 car. At $80,000, your car should not exceed $40,000. You get the idea. He also found that in a survey of 10,000 US millionaires, the average millionaire drives a 4-year-old car with 41,000 miles on it, and 8 out of 10 millionaire car buyers drive it away debt-free without carrying a car payment behind them. Honestly, the truth is, just by not having a payment, you're gonna have so much more money left over to put into something that's probably gonna make you a lot more money. Separate from that, another rule I really enjoy comes from the Financial Samurai blogger who suggests that you buy a car that's worth no more than 10% of your income that you intend on keeping for at least 10 years. So if you make $100,000 a year, spend $10,000 on a car. If you make $50,000, spend $5,000 on a car, and so on. Even though this might not seem like a lot of money, and it might seem a bit excessive, the truth is, owning a reliable, used car like this means you're not going to be burdened by high car payments. You're going to have discretionary income left over to invest elsewhere, and maybe you could apply those resources towards other areas of personal enjoyment. However, even though all of these car buying guides are really geared towards people who want to be financially responsible, the truth is, a dealership will give you so much more money than you should ever take on. And if you're curious how much money you could actually qualify for, get ready for your mind to be blown. Just like buying a house, car dealerships look at what's called your debt-to-income ratio, which calculates how much money you have left over after your expenses. In this case, most dealerships will qualify you based on a debt-to-income ratio below 46%, which means no more than 46% of your overall income should be going towards your debt payments. As an example of this, if you make $5,000 a month, a lender would allow you to spend up to $2,300 of that, which, if all you have is an existing $500 student loan and a $200 credit card payment, they would gladly finance the remaining $1,600 a month, which could buy you a lot more car than you would expect. See, here's the thing. When you finance a car, a lender's not going to look at your bank statements and think, oh, you know what, this person probably shouldn't be spending this amount of money in a car. It would be financially irresponsible. Instead, all they care about is the cost of the car every single month. And as long as they could get that payment down to a price that they could approve you for, you can walk out with practically anything. For example, let's say you make $6,000 a month and your monthly expenses include $1,200 in rent, $200 in student loans, and $100 in credit cards. In that case, your debt-to-income ratio would be 25%, leaving you with another 21% or $1,260 a month to buy a car. In that case, let's assume you want to use that payment towards buying a $73,000 Mercedes G63. Well, on a 3-year loan with no money down, that would come out to be $2,431 a month. But since lenders only care about that monthly payment, if you stretch out that loan to 96 months, all of a sudden the payment drops to $1,189 a month. And voila, now you could technically get approved for it, even though you would be making payments on the car for the next 8 years. Or I guess you could look at it this way. If you have a monthly budget of $500 a month, that'll buy you a $15,000 car over 36 months. Or that could buy you a $31,000 car over 96 months. Other places even offer terms up to 180-month financing, which is basically the same as getting a 15-year mortgage on a house, except with a car. Why? Even more concerning is that some lenders are willing to finance 125% of the car's value. So if you want to buy a car for $30,000, you could finance $37,500 to pay for things like sales tax, registration, and other dealership fees. Needless to say, dealerships do not have your best interest at heart, so it's really important to make a budget ahead of time and stick with it. Now, personally, as a car enthusiast myself, I get the appeal of wanting to spend a little bit more money in the car you drive. And as much as I agree with Dave Ramsey or the 23-8 rule, there are ways that you would be able to own and drive a car and lose very little, if any, value whatsoever. Here's been my experience. The first car I ever bought was back in 2008, and it was a 2005 used Toyota Prius for $8,500 with 70,000 miles on the clock. I drove that car for 4 years, and by the time I moved on, it was still worth about $5,500, meaning I only lost about $62 a month in depreciation for driving it 12,000 miles a year. Now, around the same time as doing that, I also bought a used 2006 Lotus Elise for $30,000 in cash, which I then sold a few years later for $30,000. I later bought a 2008 Lotus Exige S240 for $50,000, which I sold a few years later for $50,000. There's also my 2005 Ford GT that's currently worth about 50% more than what I paid, or my Tesla Model 3, which is now fully paid off and has lost only around $13,000 in value after rebates. Basically, my depreciation on that is only $215 a month for driving 54,000 miles. Generally, the cars I buy barely lose any value because I'm a car fanatic, and the idea of a car losing value every time I take it out just doesn't seem appealing to me. That's why if you're interested in doing something similar, I tend to believe that a used Model Y is a fantastic deal right now, especially because the tax credit is expiring on September 30th. So if you're on the fence about buying an EV and you qualify for the credit, Now is the time to make this happen before it goes away. Besides that though, depreciation-proof cars might include something like the Honda S2000, an older Mazda Miata, mid-2000s Corvettes, mid-2000s BMW M3s, early 2000s Porsche Boxsters, a used Subaru Impreza, the Toyota FJ Cruiser, late 2000s manual Audi R8s, and of course, believe it or not, a used Mercedes G-Wagon. They tend to hold their value incredibly well. Maintenance, can't comment on that, but in terms of resale, can't argue against it. Yes, I do get that those are specialty cars, but there's a big demand for them, and they're almost like a savings account where you can put your money into the car and get most of it back by the time you sell, minus things like gas, insurance, and maintenance. Or you could always purchase a more commuter-friendly car that's not really going to depreciate in price. These are usually 5 to 7 years old with 30 to 60,000 miles on the clock, and might include brands like a Toyota, Honda, and Tesla, to name a few. Yes, these cars are still going to lose value, but it's going to be nothing as bad as a brand new Mercedes and BMW. It's just going to wreck you over time. All of that is to say that if you just need a good car for commuting, pick something that's good on gas, reliable, cheap to maintain, and that you could afford to pay off within 3 years that costs no more than 10% of your gross income if you can't afford to pay for it outright in cash. For everything else though, preferably keep your payments to a minimum, maintain proper insurance coverage at all times, find a good local mechanic that you could trust, and then just drive it until the wheels fall off. By following this, I promise that you're going to be able to save a ton of money long term. And if you found this helpful, like I said, it would mean the world to me if you hit the like button or subscribe if you haven't done that already, and I promise I will do my best to read and respond to as many of your comments as I can. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time.